Today we're going to take a look at Ana Kasparian and John Iadarola talking about some comments made by Dennis Prager. Now, this is not a brand new clip. This is a blast from the past, but this has been kind of tickling the back of my mind recently, and I wanted to give it another look. So let's dive in.
As if stripping women of their bodily autonomy and rights to make decisions about their own bodies wasn't harsh enough, Dennis Prager has put out an op-ed in a publication known as the Daily Signal to say, women really need to control their emotions, and here's how I propose they do it. So he starts by talking about, listen, there are some differences between men and women. Okay, it's important for us to make sure we raise good boys so they don't turn into rapists and criminals, but we've been ignoring the women. We've been ignoring the women, and it's equally important. I mean, they're not more predisposed to be criminals and rapists, but they've got those emotions, and we've got to control that. So he writes, as I've been telling parents for many years now, they need to teach their daughters to control their natures just as much as they teach their sons to do so. Specifically, girls have to learn to control their emotions.
As I've been telling parents for many years now, what does he have, like parenting seminars? Does he just walk up to people on the street with kids and offer this unsolicited opinion?
Let's pause for a second. To be fair, right-wing men are known for being very calm individuals. I mean, Donald Trump, our latest Republican president. If there's one thing Trump is known for, it's keeping his head cool, never having any meltdowns. He's just an unemotional, straight to the facts kind of guy.
So for those of you who aren't paying full attention, Ana Kasparian here is employing something called sarcasm.
Continue. He writes, just as the male sexual drive and violent impulses can overwhelm their conscience and their ability to think and act rationally, emotions can do the same thing in girls and women. Overwhelm their conscience and their ability to think and act rationally.
Now, wait a minute. I'm not sure I like the universe this is starting to draw, but I'm just going to let it play out.
If you think that's bad, I'm just getting started, okay? Little tippy tip of the iceberg. He continues. At least 2 generations of parents, especially among the well-educated, because of course they got to trash education because they love an ignorant population they can exploit, did not teach many of their daughters to control their emotions and think rationally. The result is that women are disproportionately active in doing damage to our society. It's the women, guys. It's the women with their emotions doing the damage in society. Disproportionately.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, like, is he going to get to some specifics here? Like, what is he talking about?
What are they doing?
Setting
off nukes, dirty bombs. What are they doing disproportionately?
So he did mention specific people he's against, right? Like, or professions he's against, but he didn't give specific data to back up what he's saying. He says American schools teach less and indoctrinate more than ever before. Big city public and most private schools, he's going after private schools too, are damaging young Americans to an extent in ways no one imagined just a few years ago. Young children are prematurely sexualized. And who is facilitating all of this?
Matt Gaetz.
That's it. I mean,
more.
Of course he didn't mention Matt Gaetz. In virtually every case, a woman. 92% of kindergarten teachers are women, 75% of all teachers are women, and 85% of librarians are women.
Just a little dig at Matt Gaetz there, which turns out to be much more timely than they probably could have expected.
Good job in giving us statistics on what percentage of these, professions attract female workers. But can you provide the data for the sexualizing children part of it? Because there is none. So wait, his thinking is emotional women, because that's what emotions do to women, right? Whenever I get emotional, the first thing I think about is what? In his mind, is that what happens to you, Dennis Prager? When you get emotional, is the first thing that comes to mind, hey, I need to sexualize some children? Is that because you have this on your mind?
Well, he thinks it's very common and
he thinks it's very common.
It's widespread, sweeping the nation.
I want to know why Dennis Prager is thinking about sexualizing children.
I think that's a great question, one of many. Maybe he'll let you on his network to talk about that.
Not interested.
Yeah, there's some pretty amazing stuff there. First of all, glossing over, he understands that if he says women are disproportionately damaging, the obvious counterpoint is, I kind of feel like guys do a lot of the murdering and the raping and the robbing and all of that. And so he gets out in front of that and he's like, yes, men often feel homicidal rage, but in the same way, women can't control their emotions. And then what is the result of that? He's really not specific. I guess the result of that is that you might be a librarian in a building where there's a book that sensitive conservatives don't like. So largely it's the same thing. I guess it's the same. He's very worried about schools indoctrinating kids. He's literally the namesake for PragerU. That's not a real school, but does create propaganda videos online. So I can see why he'd be sensitive about that topic. Yes, there are some schools that just propagandize to people. Do women do some bad stuff? Sure. You know why? Because they're humans and humans are the worst. The idea that they disproportionately do more social evil than men is possible. It's not impossible, but it would demand strong evidence. And simply citing the fact that there are women librarians just ain't gonna cut it. Except maybe at PragerU. Maybe that counts as like, that can pass peer review. I don't know.
Real critical thinking there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me give you some more. He lies about what goes down at children's hospitals, which of course, as I talked about on the show earlier today, leads to violence toward children's hospitals. By the way,
Great day to publish that, by the way.
Is there, yeah, exactly. Is there a profession that right-wingers don't mock, minimize, belittle, viciously attack? I mean, there's baristas, college professors, bartenders,
social workers.
I mean, the list goes on and on.
Librarians.
If you happen to work for your living in this country, the Republican Party hates you.
Yeah.
And they tell you every day, literally every day.
They respect it. If you become a senator and get a major book advance, they respect that.
They do,
If you make propaganda videos online, they respect that.
If
you try to change your career to emo singer, they have some respect for that. They're the only ones. But yeah, there's a few little carve outs that they have.
He writes, women physicians, and healthcare workers,
formerly known as lady doctors,
are at the vanguard of ruining young people's lives at children's hospitals that push giving young people puberty-blocking hormones and opposite gender hormones, performing hysterectomies and mastectomies on healthy girls, but none of this is happening. They're not performing hysterectomies and mastectomies on healthy minor.
Well, if you're 7-year-old and you walk in and say, I want this, they are duty-bound to give it to you, and they'll pay for it too.
Again, just a little sarcasm from John Iadarola.
Considering the fact that this man is like weirdly thinking about sexualizing children, I think the only thing we should be thinking about is whether or not castration for Dennis Prager makes some sense. I'm worried about that guy. Number two, though, is seriously, like, Boston Children's Hospital just dealt with a serious bomb threat. Luckily, no one got hurt. Luckily, the threat wasn't actually carried out in reality. But they've been dealing with nonstop threats because of people like Dennis Prager claiming that they're mutilating children when they're not. When they're not. And by the time someone's an adult, okay, I would kindly ask people like Prager to shut up and stay out of people's business. Because an adult's decision about his or her own body should only be his or her own decision. It's not Dennis Prager's freaking business to discuss what he thinks an adult should do with his or her body.
Well, or what they should be allowed to do.
Or what they should be.
He's not just opining, he wants the law to determine what you can do. He wants to set it in a way that he is comfortable with based on his misinterpretation of ancient religious dogma. That's it, that's what he wants.
And he's not done. One final excerpt from this opinion piece. Because if you think clergy is safe from Dennis Prager and his ire against them, they would be mistaken. Women clergy have been at the vanguard of pushing Christianity and Judaism to the left, leaving mainstream churches and synagogues increasingly empty. Let's pause.
That's a shame.
Could we maybe consider the fact that churches and synagogues have been losing support and people have stopped, going to these establishments because a lot of what they preach ends up being backward, ends up being hateful? I mean, I don't know about
if it's even true.
If it's even true, yeah. Like,
I mean, I know there's a trend. I don't think, from one year to the next they lost 40% of their parishioners. I don't think that's really how it works.
No, it's happened over several decades for sure, right? And so there are people who might be of faith, but they don't like the organized religions.
Yep.
And so, like, which era is Dennis Prager more favorable toward when it comes to religion? Was it the era where Catholics were, Catholic priests specifically, were molesting and raping young boys? Was that the good religious era that we were experiencing? I'm just curious.
Well, that was back when they were men. Now they've been feminized and they don't do that anymore. Something, I don't know. That would be a substantive critique of the church, which is why he's not interested in it, of course.
Not interested in it. Nope.
Well, I certainly think that Ana Kasparian and John Iadarola get in some sweet burns on right-wing nutjob Dennis Prager and his take on how women are ruining America, everything from the clergy to education. I will say that while they get outraged and make some jokes at his expense, to me, this is indicative of something that's become more and more clear as we move into our current situation, which is that, propaganda doesn't need to make sense. Propaganda is basically designed to confuse, distract, divide, elicit big emotions, and offer you just enough fact or the facade of fact. This such and such percent of people, blah blah blah, and therefore something crazy. That it just needs to confuse us and keep us spinning and arguing about the baloney. So we're not watching and paying attention to the wheels that are actually in motion. Anyway, you tell me what you think, right? What's your favorite burn from Ana Kasparian? What's your favorite burn from John Iadarola? Or are we all crazy and Dennis Prager is right? Like, subscribe, chime in the comments.